Welcome to Monsoon Week in New Orleans. This is the middle of May, and we have been deluged this week every day. But we're glad to hear that our restaurants still aren't hurting, even with this terrible weather we've had on weeknights. Our chef host today tells us his place is still doing extremely well, and it's a brand new place because, you know, that's our focus, bringing you new restaurant chefs and emerging musical guests. Don't forget our website and our phone number if you want to be on the show, if you'd like to be in the audience or make any recommendations, we're there for you. And don't forget to look for the numbers. If you have any questions for our chef today or for me, we'll be happy to answer them while we're on the air. Meanwhile, we want to do our usual, and you know what that is, a stroll to the back of our studio because we're going to go and see a very talented young lady who's going to perform for you. Follow me. Okay, we're here with Miss Nova McCullum. Excuse me. Welcome.
Thank you.
Good. Nova, now tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did you hail from?
Well, I actually came from Bossier City, Louisiana.
Oh, up in there. In fact, we just had someone else from nearby Shreveport just a few weeks ago. So we're getting all the Northerners, the Yankees, as we call them down here. How long have you been here?
On and off about 14 years.
Oh, well. He also has been here for a while, so that's what we like. We like to capture them and keep them, don't let them go.
I tried to go, but I came back.
What kind do you like to categorize your music? I know some people don't like to name what they do, but I mean, I know you do all your own writing, as all of our artists do here. Do you have a particular style, or you're all over the place?
I call it blues.
Well, that's good enough for us. We love the blues artists. We don't get enough of them, and I'm glad there's starting to be a resurgence of blues. So we're really pleased to hear it. Now, she doesn't have a CD or a website yet, folks, but she is appearing at some of our favorite places, and specifically the Neutral Ground on Dan Neal with Phil Melanchon's place. When can people see you there?
I'll be there June the 24th at 8 o'clock p.m.
You know what day of the week that is?
That'll be a Thursday evening.
Thursday evening, 8 o'clock, June 24th. And when else?
And July the 23rd at 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock. Both at the Neutral Ground, folks. So if you like
both on Thursday.
Nova style, go ahead out and see her there. You know, and tell Phil that you've seen her. Okay, let's start it off. What you going to do for your first song?
This one's called She's a Witch. I actually named it something else, but She's a Witch kept sticking in people's heads, so I had to change the name.
I'm glad. Sounds good.
Gonna say when you know you should be turning around and head yourself the other way. What you liking, baby? What do you see? Will it come so easily? She's a devil, she's wicked as sin. Baby, don't you go on in, 'cause she dances, she prances, soon so will you. Hey, stud, think about it, and what do you do? 'Cause she's a witch, she's a tramp, she's a lady, she's a vamp. What you gonna do tonight? She's a witch, she's a tramp, she's a lady, she's a vamp. What you gonna do tonight? Think about it, and what do you do? 'Cause she's a witch, she's a tramp, she's a lady, she's a vamp. What you gonna do tonight? She's a witch, she's a tramp, she's a lady, she's a vamp. What you gonna do tonight? she tease you or will she get down? Satisfy all your needs. Cause she dances, she prances, soon so will you. Hey, stud, think about it, and what do you do? Cause she's a witch, she's a tramp, she's a lady, she's a fan. What you gonna do tonight? She's a witch, she's a tramp, she's a lady, she's a fan. What you gonna do tonight? So baby, you be headed from town. Did the lady aim to please? Or will you be wearing a frown? Did she have you on your knees? Cause she dances, she prances, soon so will you. Hey stud, think about it, and what do you do? Cause she's a witch, she's a tramp, she's a lady, she's a fan. What you gonna do tonight? She's a witch, she's a tramp, she's a lady, she's a fan. What you gonna do tonight? Hey baby, are you headed to town? So what the neighbors gonna say? When you know you should be turning around and head yourself the other way. She dances, she prances, soon so will you. Hey stud, think about it, and what do you do? Cause she's a witch, she's a tramp, she's a lady, she's a fan. So what you gonna do tonight? She's a witch, she's a tramp, she's a lady, she's a fan. So what you gonna do tonight? What you gonna do tonight? What you gonna do tonight?
Well, that was Miss Nova McCullum in true lounge lizard style doing She's a Witch. And stay tuned for those enchanting melodies. She'll be back for 2 more songs during the course of the day. But meanwhile, let's get to our meat and potatoes, as we call it, of our focus of our show. And we're talking about meeting one of New Orleans' chefs who's been around the city for quite some time, but finally got his own place uptown on Napoleon, right off a magazine on the corner of General Taylor. Just opened about a month ago. They did extensive renovation, the entire couple of blocks of magazine, and especially his place. Come up with a beautiful new restaurant to supplement New Orleans, and of course the new magazine Restaurant Row. And we're really pleased, and hopefully you'll get a close-up of that menu if we can see that, but we're really pleased today to welcome Chef Anton Schulte of La Petite Grocery. Anton, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Well, Anton, tell us a little bit about yourself before we talk about the restaurant. I know, like I say, you've been around the community for quite some time, but maybe the folks haven't heard from you directly.
Well, I started my culinary career about 15 years ago working at a neighborhood restaurant called Clancy's.
Very well known in our area, yes.
I've moved on from there. Probably a year or two later, worked at a few local places, Bayou Ridge Cafe. I did a brief stint with Emerald, and I worked at Peristyle most extensively.
Nice.
Probably a sum total of 6 to 7 years. That's where most of my training came from, I guess. And that's pretty much led me where I am today.
Okay. And what did you come up with the idea? First of all, for the name of the restaurant, we La Petite Grocery. We love it. What is that?
Well, the building that we're in was previously, most recently, it was Irwin's Florist, and it's actually on the corner of Magazine and General Pershing. It's not General Taylor.
Sorry about that. Right across from Mignon Faget, right?
Directly across from Mignon Faget, that's correct. Okay. Previously to it being Irwin's Florist, it was the Frank A. Vonderhaar's Fine Foods, a local boutique grocery store going all the way back to, I think, the 40s.
Wow.
And prior to that, going all the way back to the late 1890s, it was the Magazine Street Tea and Butter Depot.
That's what we were joking about that before we started. That is really a phenomenal title. But I like the Petite Grocery. So, any idea why you came up with that particular name?
We wanted to show something that let people know that there was a little bit of French influence and that there was also a little bit of history behind the building.
Right, right.
So we chose La Petite Grocery.
Yeah. Done a beautiful job of restoring it right now, and you hopefully will see from some of the magnificent pictures. Very New Orleans style, very not Spartan by any means, but the traditional clean lines, very soft, lots of use of wood and mirrors and lights. So it really is a really refreshing looking restaurant. How many people do you seat there, please, Anton?
We seat approximately 85 people, give or take. I mean, that's based on exact seating figures.
Exactly. But now you're open only for dinner.
That's correct. We're open for dinner Monday through Saturday from about 6 o'clock until 10 to 11.
So 6 days a week, Sunday his day of rest, the old tradition. He's following the traditional way. And he's been open how long? Was that correct?
March 29th was our opening date, and we've been open since then, so a little bit better than a month.
Great. Well, as I mentioned, that we really are pleased and thrilled with his cooking. I have to admit that he's doing a lot of dishes that you might recognize as New Orleans traditional, but doing it in maybe some nouveau fashion, but even more importantly, a lot of his dishes are extremely light, even through the dessert. Maybe with one exception, which I really found a pleasure. Things that might normally be considered a little heavier, the sauces are heavily used in other restaurants, consistently light in its flavor, and it really just makes your palate really enjoyable. So what we're going to do, unless there's any other questions about the restaurant that left off, we're going to maybe go ahead and start in the menu. Anything else you want to say about the restaurant before we move on?
Just location-wise, that we actually have a parking lot across the street from the restaurant.
Great. Yeah, well, New Orleans uptown restaurants, people know, it's either they love them or leave them because of the neighborhood street parking, which is fairly easy after 6 o'clock to find anything around, especially uptown on Napoleon. But he's even got the extra luxury of a parking lot. Give a little bit more details about the parking lot.
It's across Magazine Street. It's actually one location down from the restaurant and across on Magazine Street.
So diagonal from your restaurant page.
Pretty much.
Yeah, okay. So the only inconvenience is crossing the street. And again, like we said many times, either corner you can, on both sides of Magazine Street in the evening, you should, unless this restaurant is filling up totally, you should be able to find some places nearby. There are a couple other restaurants there, so it's easy to fill those up with local traffic. But just an extra convenience for you diners, so don't say, oh, well, it's too hard to find a parking place uptown. We won't go. Give him a try. Okay, now let's go ahead and start with some of the, for the folks, as you know, we always try and picture some of the food in each of the categories for you, and then describe it a little bit why he's here, and then if we have more time, we'll talk about some of the other items that we don't have pictures for you. But we always start off with the appetizers, and I believe the first appetizer is a wonderful sausage dish. Can you tell us about this, please?
Sure. That's a homemade garlic and herb sausage. It sits on top of rutabaga puree and grilled red onions, and then it's topped with a dollop of Creole mustard and finished with a basil pistou, which is similar to a pesto. It's I guess the French version of a pesto.
Right. Beautiful presentation. Again, folks, it's so hard. Very rarely do you find rutabagas in any restaurant, so I was delighted to taste. The taste is just phenomenal. And then putting a little bit of the horseradish, just balancing the sweetness of the rutabaga and the great taste of that homemade sauce is really excellent. And a beautiful presentation, rounding it around. So you've done a wonderful job with it. There's a little close-up for you. You can see a little better the sausage and the rutabaga and the horseradish. Okay, let's move on to the next one. I think the second one we looked at is your oysters. If it's not the oysters, then it's the
nope, that's the crawfish ravioli.
That's the way we had it, and I apologize for calling it out wrong.
No, that's
Talk
fine.
about a wonderful dish, folks. Again, the picture's not doing it justice because not a lot of contrast there, but magnificent. You can see though through those almost dumpling-like raviolis, those thin raviolis, the crawfish bulging through there. The color is just penetrating. Extremely delicate. Tell us a little bit more about the stuffing and a little sauce in it, because it's very light, very, very light.
It's a brandy herb cream sauce, but it's not a typical New Orleans style cream sauce that's reduced down to be really heavy. It's kind of a lighter reduction, and it's infused with brandy and herbs. The ravioli itself, we start from scratch on all of our ingredients. So we make the pasta ourselves in-house. We roll out the ravioli by hand. We make the crawfish filling. It's a very laborious process, but I think it's worth it in the long run. And then the dish is topped off by a small pile of wilted leeks.
That's leeks.
Yes, leeks that are sliced thin and then cooked in butter for...
I almost thought it was kelp, but it didn't. Kelp has that unusual flavor, but I didn't even know. I didn't even fail to ask that, but it was really a nice touch. But as he mentioned, folks, everything's made from scratch, and that's where you really can tell. And once again, he's talking about a sauce that in most other places would be much heavier. This is so light. I mean, it really is amazing. So it really doesn't overpower at all the ravioli or the great contents. Okay, now I think we'll move forward and hit that dish I was talking about, and that is easy. Was one of my favorite of the appetizers, the oysters, pan fried. I'm telling you folks that I'm going to ask him to tell us his secret here on the batter. I could not get over how light. Once again, the lightness is the word I'm using. A lot of people are using panko now, which is a little different crust. But this was extremely well done. I mean, usually the consistency on batter I find differs on every oyster, and it might be within the same oyster. One side would be heavier than the other. No matter which oyster you ate, no matter what part of the oyster you ate, it's going to be constantly consistent with that great light batter flavor. Tell us a little bit more. I know you can describe it better than I can.
Well, it's really pretty simple. It's oysters that are dropped in whisked egg whites, and then they're removed from the egg whites and dropped into an equal parts all-purpose flour and cornmeal mixture that's seasoned. And that's it. Then they're flash fried in a saute pan until they're golden brown. Wow.
Very, very simplistic, very pure. But like I say, I find most fried oysters are much too heavy for in regards to the batter. So this is the first time I've thoroughly enjoyed a fried oyster because the batter was so thin and so consistent. So really light, and again, as I mentioned, throughout all of his flavors that we're talking about today, I find a true lightness in it that really makes it refreshing, as opposed to so heavy that you feel stuffed after you eat. Instead, you're comfortable, and especially now with the hot summer coming on, this is a great touch. Okay, now, he only carries one homemade soup du jour, but that's all we really need, and I think we've got a picture of the one we had that evening, and I believe it was some type of mushroom soup. Wasn't it roasted mushroom?
That's correct. It was a mushroom and Madeira soup with fresh thyme and truffle oil. And you can see right there the truffle oil drizzled across the top.
Right. Truffles. I think you can't go wrong if you use truffles in any dish. I'm real biased on that. And the truffle oil, of course, is the next best thing to actually having the truffles itself. So I would like to maybe try the soup one day without the truffle oil, but I hate for you to remove it because I think that is really a tremendous asset to the soup. So people say mushroom soup, everybody got mushroom soup, but put a little truffle oil in, it's going to really bring it up beyond par.
Yeah, that's a big flavor enhancer. The truffle oil really takes it beyond just mushroom soup.
The mushroom soup, but still on its own, the flavor of the soup by itself is really excellent. A great roasted taste to the mushroom. Okay, and you want to tell us real quickly maybe some of the other highlights of other soups that we haven't seen before we move on? Some of the other specialities?
We do a lot of seafood soups. We try to stick with things that are native to New Orleans or the Gulf Coast area. We'll do a soup of tomatoes and fennel with apple smoked bacon and oysters. That's pretty popular.
Very popular, yeah.
Really, we do something new every day, so it's hard to
Yeah, okay, but I just wanted to give some of the creativity you're doing, because just like this, adding the truffle oil is not something most people will do to any soup, let alone to the mushroom soup. All right, now let's look at a couple of salads. He's got a beautiful array of salads on his menu, folks. But the two we had, I had handpicked with him before we came. And I think we're looking at the warm spinach. Folks, this is one of the most unusual and creative presentations. Salad niçoise is my favorite salad of all. And this is very reminiscent of it, but done with a twist. So tell us about that. I called it a breakfast salad, and you said that's what you refer to it as.
Right. This is similar to a dish that's called a French morning salad, which is generally frisée with bacon or some form of smoked pork product. And then topped with a poached egg or a fried egg. Well, this is baby spinach that's wilted down with a roasted shallot vinaigrette and chunks of pancetta, and then topped with a fried egg. It's very decadent and very very rich.
That's the best one, but still not heavy. People say, eggs, that's so heavy. Absolutely not. Your egg was so light, it was just fantastic. But what a great combination, folks. So if you really want an eye opener, let's put it in, and really talk about the town on your with the rest of your diners, certainly include that as part of your selection, because it was just a phenomenal taste. Certainly not overpowered by that egg at all, just enhanced by it. Now the next is really super delicate, and this is of course because we're using the blue crab. And let's see if we take a look at that one and describe it. I mean, this is pure pristine, but just delicious.
This is the crab meat and artichoke salad. It's blue crab, which is the Louisiana crab, blue crab,
right?
Jumbo lump meat only.
Magnificent, really.
And it's just simply tossed with aioli that's spiced up just a little bit, and artichokes that we blanch in-house, and then it rests on top of tomato petals that are cooked in olive oil, and surrounded by, you can see there, some French toast croutons.
The tomato, how you enhance the color though in a tomato is just, to me, I mean, it's just phenomenal. It becomes almost neon-like, you know. Really, I mean, it just is just a tremendous color. And but you don't need anything else as far as I'm concerned, but just the crab meat. It was so good and so pure. The other thing is just lanyap on the salad, but I mean, the lump crab meat was just phenomenal. There's another view, so you got a beautiful portion stacked up high, and certainly a refreshing thing. Right now, for these days, this is just the salad I think to try, ought to have, because of the coolness. Okay, now let's look at a few of the entrees, and then we'll come back to you, because it looks like we might have a few more minutes to talk about. Don't forget, if you want to call, the director's been putting some of the phone numbers up. We're pleased today to be talking to Chef ANTON SCHULTE with his brand new restaurant called La Petite Grocery on Magazine and General Pershing, right across from Mignon Faget. We're talking about, folks, 1 block from Napoleon, so it's so easy to find. And if you right across from the police station, so if you get lost, just ask and he'll point across the street. But done a beautiful job of this corner restaurant. On the inside, the outside is just as unpretentious as the inside, but really, definitely a New Orleans style that I think fits the neighborhood and befits the restaurant. So let's go ahead and jump into into our entrees. And I believe the first one we looked at was a lamb dish. Is that not right? Let's see if we can. Yes. Take a look at this right here.
That's correct, and that's one of our most popular entrees. It's a tomato and mint braised lamb shank. It's a very long process. The lamb is seared first and then braised in tomatoes, mint, garlic, onions, demi-glace, until it's just falling off of the bone, almost completely off of the bone. Absolutely.
I mean, I have to admit that this was... Don't worry about that bone, folks. As soon as you touch it, the meat is off of it. It's so tender. I didn't mean to cut you off. What else on it? Because it was delish.
That's served on top of some goat cheese polenta. It's a soft polenta we make in-house every day.
I think we might have another picture. I'm not sure. We have 2 pictures of that, but you can see it resting on there, and the polenta in the back.
And then what you can't see is there's some grilled... there they are.
Yeah,
there's
that's grilled red onions.
Around, yeah. Grilled red onions that go right on the side of that. And the goat cheese polenta it's done fresh every day right before service, so you know the goat cheese is a mild flavor, but it's certainly present in the polenta.
Yeah. That's what I've been saying on the show for the last maybe year now. It's so good to see that finally we're going back to so many of the dishes that we considered too peasant or too banal to be on the menus. And like polenta, I think came back maybe 10 years ago and now has really, made a statement for itself. These are dishes that I think got, in the fine dining jargon, they got looked past the side because they were basically peasant dishes in their home country. But still, they're talking about what a great compliment to this dish. I mean, it just is the filler in that particular dish, but also excellent done with the goat cheese. And the final touch of the little red onions there on the side. That's why we had to spin it around, because of the really great flavor on it. Okay, now, he mentioned about his soups being a specialty and liking to use a lot of New Orleans or seafood soups. And this next one is always a soup dish. Soup entree, excuse me. My favorite French soup entree is bouillabaisse. And this is just a magnificent presentation, folks. If you've not had it, it's a combination of different seafoods together in a wonderful broth, but I want you to describe it more, because there's some twist in here that you're not going to find some of the other bouillabaisses in town.
Sure. This is what I like to call the New Orleans style bouillabaisse, and I guess the picture can be a little misleading. There's one seafood in-house that we use that's not Gulf based or New Orleans or Louisiana based, and that's mussels. Right. And I couldn't resist. I love mussels so much, and they're perfect for bouillabaisse. But this bouillabaisse, aside from the mussels, has all Gulf seafood in it, and I'm not sure if you can pick out in the picture, but there's the mussels, there's jumbo lump crab meat, there's a couple of jumbo shrimp in there. That's phenomenal. Those, you can barely see those in the center. Maybe you can see a little bit of the shrimp tones to it, but tell us what else, because they were kind of intertwined in something else. There's also tuna in, there's fresh Louisiana oysters in, and also a whitefish of the day that we use, so it's always fresh, and it always coincides with whatever the fish is that night on the menu. And tell us more about the broth itself, because I found a divergence there with regard to the flavor and the color, really. That a lot of the bouillabaisse are just basically clear, maybe a little saffron yellow, but this is that vibrant orange, and the flavor and the stuff on there. It's a saffron and tomato wine broth that we make, and what really brings it out is the fact that to order, you can see on the top of the dish there's a dollop of what's called Revue, which is kind of a red pepper aioli. It's a French dish, and we take a little bit of that Revue and whip it into the broth, and that adds another flavor dimension and another brightness and color to the broth on the dish. And then the dish is finished with fresh herbs and a dollop of the Revue right on top. The Revue on top. Really great, folks. I mean, I think if you like bouillabaisse, and of course, as he mentioned, French, the mussels are the French probably favorite seafood of all. I think all French people. So he's bringing something that has to be in bouillabaisse, even if it's not a Louisiana product. But at the same time, he's taken all the rest, and something that many of the other people won't do, like tuna, they'll use just a piece of fish, but he's got a great whitefish, he's got tuna, you got your shrimp. Really magnificent selection, and again, folks, extremely light. You couldn't get a better entree here than this for now. Of course, the big tendency here is to lap up all that broth, and depending on what you're using to lap up with that, can certainly maybe fill you up. By the way, I have to admit, I did not try, and hopefully I'm not imposing or putting you on the spot about your bread selections. Do you? Because to me, that's one of the big judges of New Orleans restaurants, are bread choices on your plate. The bread that's an odd question, but just because of who makes the bread. We actually buy our bread. It's made fresh daily for us by a company called Wildflower Bakery. Okay. And oddly enough, that's a Susan Spicer company who owns Bayona. Yeah. So there's a little bit of Bayona in La Petite Grocery every day. But do you use a different selection of bread each time, or just one particular bread? We always stock a French pistolette, and a whole wheat roll. And the reason that we buy it from Wildflower Breads is because they make a nice French style, crusty, chewy bread. It's not quite like the typical New Orleans French bread, which is a bit more airy.
Airy, exactly. So I put a little more meat to it. But well, I didn't get a chance to try any of the breads. That's the only reason why I'm sorry if I put you on the spot, because some people don't show bread. But to me, you've got to have bread on the table, and to me, depending on what you use or select, whether you make it in-house or buy it outside, if it's the right choice, it really makes the meal. Okay, now the last of our pictured entrees is a wonderful duck breast, folks, and we wanted to give you a little variety. Take a look at this, and just really beautiful. I think we've got two different angles too, because of the way it has that crown on it at the top. But let's start with the duck itself, please.
The duck is a pan-roasted duck breast. We sear it low heat, skin side down, in order to render all the fat out of the duck breast or the duck skin and make it more crisp. And then we'll generally cook it to mid-rare or to the customer's specifications. It's served with a homemade fig and thyme preserve that goes into a demi-glace sauce, and it goes on top of a toasted pecan and basmati pilaf.
Wow.
And baby carrots.
Yeah, I didn't ask about the basmati rice, but that, of course, is my favorite rice flavor, and you can taste it in here. And, of course, the baby carrot presentation, let alone the taste, it's just magnificent. Brings out that same color that's in part of the sauce. So, folks, if you're afraid of a duck, don't be. This is super, super mild. It's not a heavy taste at all. And again, once again, that light sauces that he's doing is just really bringing out the flavor of it. Let's see if we can. We have a few more minutes, so let's again, folks, if you want to call in, the number's on the screen. We're talking to Chef Anton Schulte of the brand new La Petite Grocery on Magazine, one block off of Napoleon, opened 6 nights a week for your dining pleasure. And I'm telling you, it will be a dining pleasure. But let's go ahead and talk about a few more entrees that we don't have pictured for folks to show the variety. Everyone has to have a chicken today, and but what's good about it is there's so many varieties that chicken is a good dish. Tell us what you do with it.
Our chicken is it's a half of a chicken, and we try to use a little bit smaller chicken because it can be such a large entree. A half chicken can be anywhere from 1 to 2 pounds.
Right.
So we try to pick the little bit smaller chicken so that people aren't getting too stuffed. And you keep mentioning that things are light there. It's not to say that they're sparse at all. It's just that we use a lot of I guess newer cooking techniques. We don't use a lot of flour-based thickening agents, so things come out tasting a lot more fresh and
I hope I didn't mean.
No.
We're not talking about portion size. We're talking about flavor size, because our standards have been. I'm gonna cut it short for a second. We do have a caller. Let's see if we can take this, and we'll go back to that. Welcome to Restaurant Review, caller. Who's calling, please?
This is Hector.
Yes, sir. What can we help you with?
Well, I just wanted to let Anton know that I've been to his restaurant a few times, and I've loved everything from the service all the way to the food. My question is, as far as are you doing any menu changes soon, and if so, what could we expect?
Probably between the beginning of June to the middle of June, I'll switch over to a summer menu and just across the board probably lighten things up a little bit.
Lighter than light.
Well, I guess so. Yeah, lighter than light. We'll just maybe the lamb shank will change to some form of lamb chop, because it's such a sizable entree, and the components of it can be so heavy that for summer months that might be a little daunting for some of the customers.
But you're not looking for that constant change of menu. You're just looking
for
some seasonal differences.
Right. We'll revolve once a season, so 4 times a year, and maybe a few changes here and there just to suit customer requests.
Hector, do you have any particular request for him to think about for the future?
Not necessarily. Maybe some lighter salads, but I think he has something real special there, and I hope to see him again.
Well, I know he appreciates those comments. And folks,
thank you very much.
For someone to have already patronized his restaurant only a month and a half, that I know makes him feel good. So thank you again for that call, Hector, and spread the word. Okay, I know we were talking about the chicken. I don't know if we finished it because, like I said, we wanted to honor the caller. You want to go back over it a little bit more without spending too much time on it?
Sure. We sear the chicken skin side down in the pan, and it's topped with a garlic aioli and then turned over and finished in the oven. And the aioli actually makes a nice garlic crust as it cooks on top of the chicken. And it's quite simply, it's served with a reduction of chicken stock that's in the pan with the chicken, and mashed potatoes and roasted zucchini strips. It's very simple, but it's very tasty.
Speaking of, and I have one more, well, we have a whole bunch more, but we're going to have to talk about steak. It's just like you have to have chicken, you have to have a steak. But before we address that, the other day when I was in the kitchen talking to his sous chefs, there was something that was so magnificent. You mentioned zucchini. There was zucchini flowerets, and I've never seen that anywhere. Certainly not in a restaurant, but even in a garden. So it was just magnificent. Can you tell us, and obviously, are they edible itself, the flowerets?
They're definitely edible, and it's zucchini blossoms. It's the part of the zucchini that falls off right before, or right after, I should say, it starts to grow the zucchini itself.
The zucchini itself.
It's oftentimes stuffed with things, and what we had that day, I had just picked up the zucchini blossoms from the farmer's market on Broadway, and we used them on the fish of the day. They were simply stuffed with crab meat, fennel, and peppers, and then roasted in the oven to top off the fish of the day that day.
Excellent, folks. I love edible flowers, and even though that's a flower of a vegetable, it was so unusual, so beautiful. So I was just enjoying the chef and seeing his preparation. Didn't see the final version of it when we were there, but to be that shows you the level of creativity here to include that in the dishes. Okay, let's go ahead and just touch on, he does do a filet for the person who has to have a steak. Tell us what you do there, and hopefully that's not your heaviest dish.
Well, it's probably our most popular dish. We get a lot, we sell a lot of fillets on a nightly basis. It's a grilled fillet, it's topped with Roquefort cheese, and it goes on top of our version of cream spinach, which again is maybe a little bit lighter. It's spinach that's wilted down in butter with a touch of garlic, and then cream is added and reduced down with the spinach with a little bit of Parmesan cheese. And then all of those things sit on top of Lyonnaise potatoes, which is a classic French dish. And then it's topped simply with a Madeira and demi-glace jus. Not a thick demi-glace sauce, but a thinner, lighter demi-glace sauce.
Sounds great. Now, folks, we only have a minute or so left before we throw it back to the musician. But let me tell you just a couple other, real quickly. He's got a wonderful pasta with shrimp dish. He's got a seared tuna for those who love, like yourself, who love the tuna tataki, however. And he also is going to do some grilled pork loin and a couple others. So, folks, even a flank steak. So he's got a lot of New Orleans combination variety for you. And we're speaking about, of course, Chef Anton Schulte with his new La Petite grocery. But meanwhile, let's go ahead and refresh your palate with a little music, your audio palate, and we're going to welcome back to the studio Miss Nova McCullum. She's called herself a blues singer and writer, but let's take a look and see what she has to do. Nova, what will you do for your second song, please?
This one's called Wicked Little Secret. Got a wicked little secret and it's something we share. When I thought things were going nowhere, the moon was full and the mood was right, playing our music on a Saturday night. You came around and swept me away, a line or two and a hand grenade. The world was spinning around and around, but we knew just what was going down. It's a nasty little secret that you love so well. Keeps you smiling but you never tell. Your name's intact, your reputation's safe, and you're moral for the church's sake. You came around and swept me away, a line or two and a hand grenade. The world was spinning around and around, but we knew just what was going down. So do the do behind forbidden doors, then go home with a smile once more. Ain't no one gonna ever know how you sold the devil your soul. You came around and swept me away, a line or two and a hand grenade. The world was spinning around and around, but we knew just what was going down. So do the do behind forbidden doors, then go home with a smile once more. Ain't no one gonna ever know how you sold the devil your soul. You came around and swept me away, a line or two and a hand grenade. The world was spinning around and around, but we knew just what was going down.
Okay, that was Nova McCullum doing a second song. Really catchy little tune there. Kind of the sound of this seven Vestal Virgins. I don't know what that was. That was a secret song. But anyway, she's keeping up that same tempo for us, folks, and let's see what she does for a finale when we finish. But meanwhile, I want to get back to the ball game in hand, and we're again pleased to be speaking to Chef Anton Schulte of his new La Petite grocery on Napoleon, right off a magazine. We understand there was a caller during Nova's song, and if she cares to call back, we'll be glad to catch her before the end of the show. But we only have 10 or 15 minutes, caller, so you need to... Oh, there she is. So let's go ahead and take it before we start, Anton, if you beg. Welcome to Restaurant Review. Who's calling, please?
Louise. And I want to know where the chef trained.
Okay. Well, as we always do a little bio in the beginning, perhaps you missed
it.
No problem. Chef, I'm happy to go ahead and explain it again.
Actually, something I left out of the bio in the beginning is I went to the Delgado Culinary School and did the Delgado Culinary Program, and that's when I started there. I don't know if you know this or not, but they have their position is that you have to work 40 hours a week in a restaurant while you're in school, which is it's different from CIA or Johnson and Wales, which do externships later on. But that's my culinary starting point was at Delgado.
But you want to run real quick through the restaurants again,
Sure.
just in case you
Sure.
also wanted that?
My first restaurant that I worked in was Clancy's, which is uptown.
Still going strong.
Then I worked at a place called Bayou Ridge Cafe, which is now defunct.
Yeah, when it became Marisol, now moved to Esplanade Ridge and became Marisol, didn't it?
Right, that's correct.
And then the old place is Semolina's, of course, but wonderful
Yes.
old restaurant. And what else?
I did a little stint with Emerald.
Like everyone.
Right.
Emphasize the little.
I worked for a long time at Peristyle, and I was
Right.
also the executive chef at Joel's Catering Company.
Okay. So he's got a lot of credentials. Some
He
of the
sure does.
some fine restaurants. Any other questions we might have missed for you in the beginning?
No, that's it. But
Well,
I'm
we-
enjoying this program particularly.
Thank you very much for
Thank you.
calling. He's gotten some really nice compliments, so that's great for a chef who's only had his own place for a month and a half now. I know
I
he's.
can't wait to get up there.
Please do give him a try. Thank you for calling, Louise.
Bye-bye.
Okay, we're back on. Let's go ahead now, of course, to the creme de la creme, as they say. We want to go ahead and do our 3 desserts and little beverages before we close up the show. And let's see, I think we got even a separate list here. Let's see if we can remember. The first one, I believe, is the traditional New Orleans creme brulee. Again, let's see if we can bring. Look at that, and I'm telling you, folks, this is the traditional creme brulee. So a lot of people are doing it today and doing it in different fashions. Excellent. Tell us about it, because it is really, I think, authentic.
Well, we like to keep it simple and like you said, as authentic as possible. And it's very simply, it's a creme brulee. We use fresh vanilla beans. We lighten it up a little bit by not using all heavy cream. We add a touch of milk to it just to kind of keep it from weighing people down or feeling too heavy when they eat it. And it's quite simply topped with turbinado sugar that's glazed until it's caramelized, and that's it.
But served so perfect with regard to the top being that warm or room temperature, a little warm, and then ice cold, or I mean frozen. But I mean that contrast of heat and cold, top layer and bottom layer, just perfection. Really, I thought really perfection.
Sure.
And as mentioned, just really pure and pristine. Now let's take a look at a second one. Here's a real twist for you folks. A cheesecake. Everybody's got to have cheesecake, but we got a real difference here. Hard to find a cheesecake here until you taste it. Go ahead.
No, that's actually, it doesn't look like what most people would consider a cheesecake, but this is our version of cheesecake. It's a Creole cream cheesecake. We use, like I said,
right.
we try to use as much local products as we can, and we use Creole cream cheese, drain it overnight because it's pretty loose stuff, and then we make just a basic cheesecake out of it without the crust. And then we make pecan crisps or pecan gaillettes, as you call them.
Yeah, I tell you, folks, you can barely see them peeking around the perimeter, but it was the best tasting gaillette. And again, I call it a cracker or a wafer, but just really good. Go ahead. Really wonderful combo.
Anyway, it's a cheesecake that's presented in kind of a Napoleon style.
Right.
We serve it with fresh berries, and you can barely see ringed around the outside is lemon honey. We infuse some honey with lemon just to give it a light, fresh flavor and another dimension to it. And we always serve it with fresh strawberries.
Right.
And we use ponchatulas whenever we can.
Really beautiful presentation. Like I say, you'll fool a lot of people asking them what they think this is, because it certainly doesn't give the aura of cheesecake, but definitely in the Creole cream cheese is just a real delight. But that pecan gaillette, I'm telling you, if you to break off a piece by itself, it's really magnificent. Really hard to judge, but really magnificent taste. Okay, now, folks, we've got an eye stopper for you. One of the things that I eat chocolate ice cream, that's obviously obvious to you, but the big deal is what I don't like about chocolate ice cream is that it melts very quickly and it becomes chocolate soup, I call it. I never eat the fluid or the liquid part. However, he's taken that, which is not ice cream at all, and made one of the best pot au feu, the chocolate soup demi-tasse, I'm calling it. But go ahead, you tell us what you call your beautiful presentation and wonderful tasting dessert.
It's a warm chocolate soup that has a raspberry liqueur added to it, and it's very simple presentation, but it's served in a coffee cup. It's topped with a dollop of double cream, which is kind of a lighter version of whipped cream, not as much sugar,
right,
and fresh raspberries. it's getting to be the most popular dessert at the restaurant, and it's quite simple. If you like chocolate, then you can't pass it up.
Exactly, and for them to be able to make this light, it is so wonderful again. And so you don't pass up the coffee, folks, or the tea. This is the thing to drink. I mean, it really is an excellent, excellent cup. So the chocolate soup is not to be laughed at anymore. It's to be enjoyed. And we do need to touch just a little bit. We only got 5 minutes, but let's go ahead and tell the folks a little bit about your beverages, because obviously we want to know what you do have. And here at Restaurant Revue, wine is always considered a supplement. It's not the leader like in many other places, and our food has got to be good and only supplemented by the wine. So, but tell us, you're doing your best, obviously, to accommodate your diners. What do you do along those lines?
Sure. My wife actually makes the wine list. She manages the front of the house, and we predominantly do well, actually not. It's almost equally divided between French and American wines.
Okay.
Obviously, the American wines are mostly West Coast,
Right.
California, Oregon, but it's pretty much equally divided. We have a lot of wines by the glass. Probably 30% of the wine list is by the glass. We offer about 5 sparklings and a couple of rosés. We also offer some half bottles for people who, maybe
Sure.
just want a glass of wine apiece.
And one of the really coolest things in the restaurant is in the main dining area. We had a picture of it early on, but you might have missed it. I know they said it wasn't what I thought it was, but it actually looked like a church baptismal font. And in that, it's lined with a wonderful sterling, chrome or whatever called cylinder, and that's where you ice down your wines. Is that right?
You can see it in the background.
Can we see it
there?
There it is, right in the center. It's hard to discern, but it is beautiful.
Instead of having individual ice buckets for each table, we have kind of a communal wine bucket, and it's done in a Roman poured marble, I believe it's what it's called. It's very, very heavy. I had to carry it myself.
But one of the most creative, and like I say, really, you have to admit, if you've ever been to any kind of certainly religious, they have these type of baptismal fonts and stuff that is just as ornate and heavy as that, but just beautifully placed in the restaurant, and at the same time, what a creative idea to see all the bottles iced down in that concept. Now, you do have, and we don't have pictures of, I don't believe, of your bar, but your bar is just a beautiful restoration of old woods and mirrors, and I know you have a full-line bartender, so for those who want a little something heavier than wine, you're also able to accommodate. Is that correct?
Sure. We have a full list of alcohols, liqueurs, extensive vodkas, all of the standard New Orleans things.
Great, excellent. Well, and again, folks, we've only touched on 3 of the desserts. He's got like 5 or 6 on, and of course, those are subject to change as he evolves his menu. Well, we've been very, very pleased today, folks, to talk to and present to you Chef Anton Schulte with his first brand new restaurant of his own called La Petite Grocery on the corner of Magazine and General Pershing, 1 block off of Napoleon, directly across from Mignon Faget and diagonal from the police station, so you should feel safe. He's got great parking on the street, as well as a diagonal free parking lot for you to have easy access. He's opened 6 nights a week, closed on Sunday, his day of rest, looking for you to join his place. His place is doing extremely well, as we talked earlier, even with this horrible weather we've had this week. He's been able to really fill his restaurant each day, so that's a great tribute to him and his sous chefs. He's got a fine staff in there working in the kitchen, as well as a beautiful and very, very friendly folks in the front of the restaurant. So don't hesitate to please patronize him, because I think you really will enjoy yourself, and we're anxious to get back there. Once again, you've been watching Restaurant Revue. We're here every Saturday for you from 3 to 4 with repeats on Wednesdays, early in the morning, late afternoon, and late Friday night. So if you missed this one, tell your friends, catch another one of the ones. Come back to us every Saturday. If we can't get a restaurant or one has to cancel last minute, we'll bring you another show, either a musical show or one of the other arts that also is entertaining. But meanwhile, we're going to go ahead and let our young lady artist, Miss Nova McCullough, finish it out for us today. We're pleased that she's been able to do it for us. And again, check us out next week, Channel 77. Nova, what will you do for your final song?
This one's called New Rue.
All righty.
hissing, rattling, and a squalling, with spiders and alligator tails. Swamp witch chanting and a hollering, mixing henbane and rooster claws. Little touch of belladonna, keep you screaming in the halls. Casting spells in the moonlight, stirring and dancing all night. On and on, she gets it right. Have a little taste, think you might. There's a new brew brewing in the cauldron. Taste of mugwort with hemlock's nice. Have a little for your darling. She be saying honey all night. Casting spells in the moonlight, stirring and dancing all night. On and on, she gets it right.